a show like this. There's a lot of things that you and I can look at as farmers to add to our system. I think the challenge for us after we come through a year like 2019, all of us know that we got some holes in our system. I think of our own family farm, what a challenge it was. What things do we need to change? Hopefully every year it goes by, we learn what things in our system would we change. And so at 360, yes, we're a nitrogen company, but we're also all about yield and inputs. I think back, we had a concentrated effort, and in the last 5 years, for our family, we've cut 44% out of our cost. In other words, we took a look, there was nothing sacred. We started planting a lot more conventional hybrids. We looked at nitrogen management. We added, our own liquid storage on the farm so we could buy our nitrogen cheaper. We talk about grain storage, all the things, but we ended up taking a lot of cost out. And so our costs have been going like this. Meanwhile, we're passionate about taking yields higher. So I think this is really the 360 story, is how do we take cost? How do we think like a corn plant? And so we know that corn is a unique crop. At the same time, you look up on the screen, there's a lot of knobs that you and I can change. We can be thinking about all kinds of different changes. I would like to simplify it and I think there's 4 knobs that you and I can do that can make a huge difference in yield. And that's when we talk about ear count, how many rows around does a cob put on, how about length, how do we maintain length? Corn, really common for pollinate 42 to 44 long. But if we're only harvesting 36, what happened to those other 8? And then the big one is at the very end, after length, is how much does each kernel really weigh? How do you and I add weight at the end of the year? I get excited on a day like this, brilliant sunshine. Now there's a little more wind than I'd probably like to have. We know that corn gets stressed in wind, but you think about how do we finish a race? And all across the United States, we're talking about we need a really good fall. And so those are things that we're going to talk about. So let's jump in. We know that it starts with having a lot of rows around. Each one row, so you think about this, how many rows around we put. I mean, we're hoping for 18. Realize that there's 16, but every one row equals 10 bushel. So if we have 18s in the field instead of 16, you got 20 bushel. It's a hidden yield. You don't think a lot about it, but those are things that we talk about. This happens early in that plant's life. So let's just draw it up here. So early on this plant, just remember this, corn can never have a bad day. Soybeans, radically different. But corn must have a good day every day. And so how this plant grows sets the stage for you and I for the rest of the year. And so when I look at this next photo and I see all these baby corn plants that are all evenly emerged, I get pretty excited. My heart starts pumping, and I say we are on the right track. We realize that evenness all the way through. If you walked home right now, if you walked in your fields today, what would I want to see? Well, I'd want to see that every row on the ear lined up from the tip to the butt. I'd want to see that every ear is on the 7th leaf from the top. Flag leaf, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 14 leaves on a plant, and so halfway you're going to have this ear. If it was on the 8th, what does it mean? You just had more stress. Something in your system needs to be changed. Remember what I said, you and I got to grab the control knob, not 100 different control knobs. Let's just do the basics. We know that for a long time, this little plant's going to live off of its seedling root. And it lives off of mama seed. Not until V5, boot high corn, is when this plant's going to set how many rows around it's going to be this year. 18, 16, 14, heaven forbid 12. We don't want that one. And so stress has an impact. So we talk all the time about what if we would put on starter fertilizer? How would that have an impact? Could that be a positive thing for you and I to think about? You say, well, wait a minute, Greg, you said cost low, yields high. How do we take track of that? You look up there and you can see on my farm, the soils that morning, I put that probe in, were 53.2 degrees. So even though Gregg's got some really high P1s, my P1s are running in the 40s, high fertility fields, I believe that we need to add starter fertilizer to get this guy going. So I get really excited about thinking if we position starter correctly, can we get a quick uptake of that plant? Because at 53 degrees, there's no phosphorus coming loose to the soil. At 53 degrees and negative positive charges, that root can grow right by there and there's nothing at the table to eat until 65 degrees. At 65, then the phosphates come off, the plant can take it in. So we add starter here, and we have that root go through there and we're off to the races. And we're going to get what? We're going to get more growth. Now we can argue, all of us have seen this picture. Every starter company in the world has an agronomist on the check row and where they use their product, and that's out there. None of us are going to argue about biomass. We're raising more biomass. Are we raising more yield? Well, that's where it gets kind of hairy. And we're saying, did it yield more? Well, if you look at this check row here, this is the exact same day, check rows on the left, starter fertilizer on the right. I will take that ear on the right any day. The one on the left's behind, and you can be sitting here, let's say it's Jim here in the center. Jim's saying, well, I think that'll finish strong, and it can. I don't know if it's going to yield, but we know that it's ahead. Think of it this way. If I had one planter in my farm, let's just say you're a family that has one 16-row planter. What do you do the first week in the spring when the ground's finally fit? You plant soybeans, you plant corn. And there's that age-old question there, what do we do first? Corn or beans? In our family, fortunately, we have more than one planter. I start the bean planter immediately. On March 28th, we went out and put beans in this year. Froze twice, snowed twice on them, and they look good. Now, we lost some plants. We started 140. We're down to 95. But I'm telling you, they're going to yield over 80 bushel. They are potted heavy, and they look really, really good. So I'm a firm believer in early beans. After 3 years of study on our farm, we're saying 10 to 15 bushel, that's a big number, of beans for early planting. So we come into early April, we're pushing, and we're saying, we'll let go. Definitely mud beans before you mud corn. A lot of us learned that lesson the hard way. This year, it was June 1st and we started mudding corn, and that's a problem, isn't it? Corn doesn't like to be mudded. But if we have starter on, let's just think about this. Let's just say we're a one planter family, okay? First week out, the whole neighborhood lights up and they're planting corn. What are you going to do? You're going to plant soybeans, all right, for the first week. So you're going to have 7 days of beans in. Everybody over here, they're laughing and scratching and they're laughing at you. Jim's planting beans. I went by the seed tender and they're Stein. You know, all that stuff goes on. Stay calm. You're going to put starter on this planter, okay? And on the second week, what are you going to do? The second week, you're going to switch to corn. How much further behind are you those guys in the first week? None. Starter fertilizer gives you a 6 to 7 day advantage on growth. So while they're laughing, snickering, and bumping each other, you're planting soybeans for 10 bushel more, 12 bushel more yield. And when you start corn the second week, you're the same age as their first week corn. And we can debate whether it's going to yield more. I believe passionately it will. Our studies over all the years, we're at 12 bushel over the last 30 years of starter trials. That's what our average should be. Some years 25, some years 2. It just depends. But I know this. I know that it makes quite a difference. So then it comes down and say, well, if we're going to use starter, where do we put it? And I think often about that, you know, whether does it go on the seed, above the seed, off the seed, you know, where do you and I going to put the starter? Let's just draw it out. Research this for years. I'm a firm believer that anywhere we go below is a real positive. Anywhere we go above becomes a little bit iffy. Remember, phosphates latch onto the soil, and that's where they're at. They don't leach. Nitrogen is radically different. Nitrogen, I intentionally put it shallow, and I let nature take it down. For phosphates, though, what am I looking for? I'm looking for this very first root out, which is a radical, and when he gets in there, he goes crazy. He branches out with microroots, and he just feeds like crazy, and we get an instant push out the gate. So we also know what? We know that there's closing systems out there, and we think about how we got rubber tires, and so when we close a lot of times, we smash it together. Depending upon the moisture of that soil, we take her and we close her. And we bring it closed, and now if it starts to dry out, if it opens up at all, what happens? We get sunlight in. About the same time your spike is coming up, if it sees sunlight, it unfolds. And as you start, pretty soon, you got a whorl that's nodding over, and you got a corn plant that's captured because it opened up, leafed out underground, due to not understanding how do we close. And so when we said, where does starter go? Gregg's saying for 360, we're going to put it here. We're also saying we're not going to longer slam this shut. We're going to do something different. So let's take a look at it. Here's what it looks like when you slam it shut. On the left, you can see here, you can see we took an air gun and we blew off the top inch, and the bottom 3/4 of an inch here was opened up. On the other side, even though it was damp this spring, look at the dry dirt in there. When you take my jackknife, you can see that seed was totally encapsulated with dry dirt. Even though the sidewalls were almost too wet to plant, the dry dirt coming off the top fell into the seed. So I challenged our team and I said, guys, let's design a starter system that's also a closing system. So we went to a shoe, and we made an adjustable shoe. In other words, it's got the capability. It comes through the right-hand wall of the side trench. It's got a lot of movement in it, so if you turn sharp right, we don't put starter in the seed. So it's over 3/4 of an inch, and it's about a 1/2 inch lower than the seed. And of course, it's spring-loaded, so if you hit a rock, you're going to go up and over it, and the whole row unit doesn't do this. And so this is called the 360 wave, and you can see it up in the screen as it's running. In fact, you can see it live back here, and you can play with it. And so we're taking dirt, and we're taking the dirt from the bottom 3/4 here, and so our shoe is coming through like this, and we're knocking dirt. Now all you have to close is the top inch. And we took 3/4 of it, and we've already encapsulated the seed, and our studies are, we believe, pretty passionate. We're going to raise you 1,000 more plants per acre over anything else that's out there in the market. So we're looking at a closing and a starter system called 360 wave. If you look at the root following the wave, and you see the radical, when I say they branch out, look at how that branched out. That thing's got micro roots coming out of it where it hit the starter band, and it's looking really, really happy, isn't it? So you say, okay, let's try some starter. But you say, you know what, Gregg, we know that starter program can run you $28 an acre. So that raised the big question mark, does it pay? Can I make starter pay? So for years, what'd we do? We plant seeds, 6 inches apart, and we would turn the starter on, and we would go from headland to headland. Last year when you were here, we started talking about a dash, where we came in and we said, what if we designed technology that every time a seed comes out of the seed trench, seed comes out, and we would put a pulse or a dash of product right beside the seed. So now instead of going a solid 6 inches, we're just going to put 3 inches out here, and this in the no man's land, we're going to save what, 50%, so now we're $14 an acre. Well, I like that number. So now I'm going to get more growth, faster out of the gate, drier corn to harvest, I believe more yield. You can say I don't see it, I don't believe it. We don't have to argue that. Let's just see what happens. But now we got it for a lot less money. At my farm, I'm going to do 2 inches. I got that technology. I'm just going to do a 2-inch dash. So we've been checking 5-gallon, 10-gallon, 15-gallon an acre rates. over the last 2 years, I get pretty excited looking at this, but I'm not excited about $45 an acre. I'm like, I ain't playing that game. I'm not putting $45 in, but if I can do 2/3, so this is 50%, this is 2/3 of a percent of this. So actually, I'm only going to buy 5 gallon for the 2 inches. It's 15 gallon rate for 2 inches, or 5 gallon an acre. So if I got a 400 gallon tank in my planter, which I do, I can plant 80 acres before I need to reload it. I'm only using 5 gallons to the acre. But my root sees it at a concentration of 15, so I get a lot of yield, a lot of maximum growth, and I'm only going to spend, what, 1/3 of that, so I'm going to spend $15. So in a $3.50 corn market, if I can get 5 bushel, I'm more than plus side. So these are things that we're taking a look at. We're saying, what if? So I really like where the wave is. Over the years, we've done all the starter. For years, the starter people did what? 2x2. And they're still arguing and talking about 2x2. So in other words, they come out and they say, what if we put the starter here and they call it a 2x2? Well, that was struggling, so they said, you know what we need to do is put some on the seed, and then they call that a relay effect. So they put a little on the seed, and then they put the majority over here. I challenged our team, and I said, why don't we just do this? Because that, from the early days of where all this come from, if we go 3/4 by a 1/2 inch, and all of a sudden, we got something that gets us really excited. So those are things we're going to show you here in a minute. As I look at that root system, I bet in this booth right now we're covering 4 states. Well, I know Argentina's here, so we're covering more than 4 states. We're covering 2 countries. And so it doesn't matter where your corn grows. It grows the same. God created corn that it just grows the same. If I know how it grows, and I see a root system like that, so it puts a crown on what you're looking at there. So here's your corn plant is. Like I told you, it puts on 14 sets. And so it's going to start to put out a crown. Well, we got the starter here to get it off the gate. Now you realize it lives off of mama's seed till it's V5. There is no root system in corn this tall. It's just starting. It's just starting to put out its roots. So if I was going to put nitrogen on, where would I put it? Well, I would put it shallow. I know what it takes to put a disc in the ground, and so for years of precision planting, we talked about downforce and delta force and how do you keep your disc opener in, no matter what soil you hit, that it doesn't come up and down, because we know uneven planting depth as much as 1/8 of an inch can bear in a plant out. And so I told our team, we're going to put it 3 inches to each side. So we're going to put it 6 inches apart, and we're only going to put it 3/4 of an inch underground, because the minute it starts to rain, this is rain, that nitrogen starts to migrate down. It's called dilution. It dilutes and it migrates down. Guess what? Your baby new crown roots are just there's 4 sets that come out of a corn plant. As they start to come through here, all of a sudden, we have a really big smile on a baby corn plant as it thinks about where the nitrogen is going to go. So 6 inches apart, 3/4 inch underground. You can see it running here. We're really close coupled. We added 5 inches to your overall row length, and we got spring-loaded disc in there. And you can see here the hose tube guides, and we're putting it, what, 3/4 of an inch underground, then we're dragging that chain behind, and now all of a sudden we got 80 units. So the planter pass, so we're putting the planter pass on anywhere from 60 to 80 units of nitrogen, and then what's Greg gonna do? I'm gonna wait. What am I waiting for? I'm waiting for nature to play her hand. I wanna see what the year's gonna be like. What do I already know that's out there? The good guys. Who are the good guys? These guys. You gotta love these little guys. And I mean, there's a lot of them out here. I will never be able to draw them all. These are the microbials. These are the good bacteria. Their job is simply this, to give Greg free 80 to 100 pounds of nitrogen. Free. I don't pay a dime for it. They take last year's residue, they're out here and they're munching on it, and they're chewing it up, and they're giving us back nitrogen, and I didn't pay a thing for it. If you and I just talked to a grower here this morning, he said, yeah, my program is 240 pounds of anhydrous, Greg, all free plant. I think he saw quickly my reaction. Didn't have my sunglasses on. I think he'd tell by looking at my eyes. My eyes kind of got wide, and I said, so you put it all on up front. It's called once and done. There's a lot of it done. I'll never understand it. I just, not me. It's just, why would you shoot all your bullets April 5th? What don't you know? You don't know how it is going to be to finish September 15th. If you run out of nitrogen and you start to pull back kernels, who's to blame? The anhydrous supplier or Gregg? And so when we think about waiting, I'm looking for this to happen. I'm wanting these guys here to go to work. Now, if we ban nitrogen, we've banned it, it's 2x over broadcast. If I brought a floater across this lot, Mike and his team is going to do what? They're going to eat all this, they're going to eat the residue from last year, and what do you think they use for jet fuel? The 28% you just put on your chemical. How many of the times you guys see an 80-degree day come along when corn's this tall, and all of a sudden your current corn turns yellow? What happened? Mike and his team's population exploded. How many of these guys do you think you got out there? I mean, it's a herd. That's why we talk about 6.4 pHs. If you keep your pHs in line, you have 36,000 pounds or 36 1,000-pound steers on every acre. 36,000 pounds of bacteria making you free N. I like this a lot. Doesn't cost Gregg anything. If I let my pHs drop, I'm talking to a young man at my winter conference in January. He said, Gregg, I met with my bank. My liming bill was going to be $30+ an acre. My line of credit doesn't have that in it. So he said, I just cut my lime. I said, you cut the lime? I said, what's your pHs? Well, but I think I can get by for a year. No, he can't. Because if my pHs go from 6.4 to 5.9, how many steers do you think you have per acre? 1. You went from 36 to 1. You went to 1,200 pounds of bacteria. You shot them all, but 1. How much nitrogen is 1,000 pounds per acre of nitrogen going to give you? The free game just ended. There isn't anything happening. So you and I have to understand nature. We got to manage these things. So I get really excited about banding in because Mike and his team can't eat it all. When they're on the band, they'll eat some of it, but they can't eat it all. My corn really sails through, and I'm waiting for what? Till Y drop time. So if I have from, let's say May, a normal year, not June 3rd, let's say from May 6th to June 20th, I know what happened in that time. I know where my nitrogen is. Did it go to the tile? Did we have inches and inches of water? Has it been really hot and dry? Then I come in of Y drop, and I can come in of a Y drop, and I can apply the remainder. And so when we say we're going to get really smart about how we manage costs and inputs and yield, this is what I'm referring to. At the same time, if we're going to put starter and nitrogen on a planter, we better figure out where to carry it. Let's switch over for a second. Why don't you go ahead and start? Tim, you got the camera? Let's show you what we're going to pulsate starter here, actually water. You look up on the screen, so every time a seed comes out of the seed tube coming through my wave, Gregg's going to have pulsating. In other words, it's timed with the seed. Not now, there's no seed coming out. It's just in a mode where it's pulsating. So that's how the starter's going to look. How about the nitrogen side? Let's go over here and look at nitrogen. I talked about how Bandit is spring loaded. Look how you can hold. So as this runs through the ground, it's going to place it 3/4 of an inch deep. Right here, you got a little hose tube guide. This little guy is going to run right in the trench that this disc is making, and you can see the nitrogen coming out. See how the nitrogen's coming out? Then we're going to have a chain behind it, and we're going to cover up. This planter pass is free. How much does Gregg pay for his nitrogen program to apply it? 0. I'm planting every acre. I just got to figure out where to carry it. So for our family, we're putting on 24 to 25 gallon. So we're coming out here, we're putting on 25 gallon of a 28% and a thiosol. Why are we putting on thiosol? Well, the environmentalists cleaned up the environment, and we know we need sulfur. so we don't get striping of corn at 10%. So if I'm going to put on 25 gallon, I'm going to put 2.5 gallon of thiosol in with that, okay? So I'm going to have to figure out where to carry it. So we designed the 360 tanks. And so you look up there in the tractor, and you can see where we got 700-gallon tanks. So we got 700 gallons, extremely narrow. My heart starts pounding when we do road work. We got big equipment, and I get really nervous on the road. And so we got it really slim and narrow, and we're carrying it back over the top. I want to put weight on the rear axle. So we're looking to put weight on the rear axle. We're carrying 700 gallon. You say, well, Greg, I got a 24-row planter, and I'm going to know that my 24-row planter, if I got 700 gallon at 25 gallon an acre, I don't go very far, and I'm going to be stopping. So we designed a system called Sprint. Sprint is where you take a gator, 300-gallon tank on it, we add an axle behind, and now we're going to come in, and the planter never stops. Our 2 corn planters at home, we got 2 gators that chase them, and it goes non-stop. Gator goes to semi and loads. The planter pulls the gator to the field. We pull the hitch pin, the semi pulls up, he jumps in the gator. Phil runs the gator at home, he's just engaged. You look up above here on the clear hose in the tank, and you're going to see water coming in. You're seeing it right there. You can see that he's loading. So on the fly, he can either bring starter or he can bring nitrogen. We have an air system that we can blow that whole thing out. So if we did nitrogen last pass, we have starter this pass, we know we don't have a lot of nitrogen. So as he goes, you're going to see him blow the tank. He's going to unhook, and he immediately turns around and goes back to semi for the next 300 gallon. We keep our planters and tractors extremely light. The gator runs non-stop. It's amazing this spring. Basically what we're talking about here is efficiency. I would say it this way. A Sprint should give you 30% more acres a day. I took a Sprint into a young man of a 16-row Kinsey in Minnesota. After one day, he planted 100 acres more by never stopping than he did the previous 3 days. And so it's all about adding and creating the right environment. So those are things that we look at. So we talk about length. I already told you there's six bushel for every one. So how are you going to manage nitrogen in 2019? We had a lot of rain, didn't we? And it's craziness. So we know we're going to come in and split apply. So you see Y drop here on a side dress bar, and we're actually putting nitrogen on top of the ground next to the plant. And so we're going to have corn here, corn stalks, and that side dress bar is coming, and he's putting nitrogen right beside both sides compared to out here in a 30-inch row where you're running a colder 2 inches deep, and you say, well, boy, oh boy, I wonder how well that works. That makes me nervous. Well, it works extremely well in all of our tests. Same amount of N compared to here, we're showing anywhere from 8 to 10 bushel more. And you say, I don't know if there's any magic in those rubber hoses. Where does that come from? And so Soybean Association in Iowa did it. They compared urea on the right square. So in other words, they took a new liter box. Everybody kind of likes that because it's easy. You just take a flat fan spreader, blow the pellets out 60, 80. I heard one guy say he can throw 100 feet, and I don't believe it, but you maybe can. And then you compare that to Y drop compared to a coulter. They showed 8.5 bushel better than the coulter and 25 bushel better than urea. I can tell you where it comes from. We get 25% more uptake actually in the corn plant. So you think about this root system here. By putting nitrogen right on top, we actually get more uptake in the plant. That's something we can measure. Ken Ferry did it at Farm Journal, and he said after 41 days, no rain, they went out and did coulter in the center, Y drop on the edge. For 41 days, they didn't have any water. And what difference did they have? 10 bushel. Where'd it come from? More uptake. If you told me you have your nitrogen in the center, in the dry center, 2 inches deep, and it doesn't rain, where'd your nitrogen go? Around the 2-inch band. It's laying right here 2 inches underground. It takes water to move nitrogen down. If you're in a 15-inch center and your corn roots have to go how deep? Almost 12 inches deep before the nitrogen has to move before they could hit the first root system. And so those are things that we talk about. So we're going to wait. We've already done the banded on the planter. Now we're here at the Hagee, and you can see us in here, and we're finishing the race. When I say we're finishing the race, we're going for what? We look to put on 0.7 pounds of N. So I'm well aware what the corn price is. All of us know we're in a $3.50 corn market. That's no mystery. And for us to be profitable, we knew to use 0.7 pounds of nitrogen to equal 1 bushel. So if you told me you're putting more than that on, I'm nervous for you. We know the industry says 1.1, but there's almost what? I'm going to tell you there's $50 an acre difference here between 0.7 and 1.1. So you and I have to figure this out. Look at this young grower. He's a once and done guy. On the far right of that field, he did 255 pounds of nitrogen, 1 shot. On the other side, on the left here, he did 75 with the planter. Remember, it's free. That's a free pass at 75 pounds. He waited till the corn was this tall. He came in at 105 more with Y-drop. So when his numbers look like this, he wanted to raise 230 bushel of corn, all right? So he applied 1.1, 255 pounds of N. Over here, he said, I'm gonna put 75. He come back of 105 side dress with Y-drop, all right? He had this on at the planter. So now he had 180 compared here to 255. $85 an acre net. These 3 guys sitting in front of me here have 1,000 acres of corn, $85 an acre return, $85,000. He can buy a pickup, he can take mom to Florida, he can buy a boat. Those are things that you and I, we farm to raise our families, don't we? There's a lot of stress right now in the ag sector. This spring really loaded guys up with stress. And then August 12th, and USDA come out with a report, it really set people off to the end. They're like, what? And so there's been a lot of stress. I'm telling you, you and I can manage that by understanding how we raise corn in the most profitable way. Let's run this through here and take a look at it. So we're gonna run the Y-drop through. He's gonna come through, he's gonna have the Y-drop running, and we're gonna look how at the base of the plant it runs. So you can see right there up on the screen, you can see it. And if I grab it here, you can see exactly what the hose is doing. So you can see the nitrogen coming out. So the Y-drops are running through tall corn. They're putting that nitrogen at the base, and it's a very positive thing. So those are the things how we do. We manage in exactly to the right yield potential. How about depth? You look at this corn here. This will make your heart pound. You look at the size of those kernels. We know that what? It takes 90,000 kernels to fill a bushel. So in the USDA, let's just write it down here. I want to drive this point home to you. A lot of people say to me, so Greg, you going to put fungicide on this year? I put fungicide on every year. I already have it budgeted in to my cost per acre. So let's just say it's a bushel basket. So in the United States, it takes what? 90,000 kernels to fill that level full. If you and I can manage our crop and our hybrids that it only took 80,000, let's say bigger kernels to fill this level full, you realize that's 28 bushel. 28 bushel that you just gained. And our starter plots, some of those starter at 15 gallon where I was using Dash, that corn was 63,000 kernels per bushel. It was yielding 293. This is what you and I are talking about. Can we manage? To do that, we have to manage disease. We know what the value of the ear leaf is. When you go in your field, this ear should be set on the 7th note from the top. There's 14 nodes. You count down, flag leaf, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's a high yielding corn. If it's on the 8th, it just means you had stress. Go home and count. When you open your corn up, these rows better line up from the tip to the butt. If you tell me these ears, they line up all the way from the butt to the tip, what's that tell you? It tells you your corn didn't have stress. Look at this corn from out here. Look here where I got it drawn on it. Right here, that circle, it went from 16 to 14. So it's 16 down here, then an inch up, it said, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. You can see it here. You can see how it scrambled. See how these rows scrambled? And we lost 2 rows or 20 bushel due to stress. Man-made stress, environmental stress, those are things we got to think about. But in this case, we know what? We're going to come in and we're going to protect those leaves. Those leaves, we're spraying fungicide there. In fact, we're spraying DeLauro. That's a Bayer product, new this year. I'm spraying there at 20 gallons to the acre. I have undercover set at the ear height, and I'm spraying up from the bottom of the canopy because I want to cover the bottom leaves. 60 or more percent of the openings are on the bottom of the leaf compared to the top. So if you have an airplane or a ground rig of just one nozzle, you're going to get near the coverage you can with something as a 360 undercover. So we're going to run through here and we're going to give her a go. So let's run through. We'll put the camera back on. He's got a top nozzle only. He's going to come through that 8 feet of corn, and I got some wet paper in there. So you can see here, he's going to come through. Now he's going to stop. He's going to turn the other cover on with one nozzle. So now there's 4 nozzles running. Go ahead, Reed. You can see it running. Look at the mist he's got now. Now he's in there and he's spraying. He's going to come through there again. And you can see it. If you look out in the sunshine, look at the coverage you're getting. You're going from the bottom up and from the top down. Tim's going to bring me those plants, and we'll take a look at them here. So Tim's going to have the one that had the nozzle only. And I'm not saying a ground rig's a bad way to go. I'm saying if you and I are going to spend $13 an acre on DeLauro, let's put it where it counts. So if we look from the top, obviously, it did a really nice job. We look at the bottom, basically plain, top, nice, bottom, basically nothing. Come over here, I think that's the last there that we have. Let's take a look here at undercover. I expect the top to look pretty good. I think if you look at all 3 of these on top, then we start looking at the bottom. There's the bottom on that plant, the second one down, first one from the top. This one here would be your ear leaf. I don't think we had any more, Tim. So kind of short corn. This plastic corn needs the nitrogen, the way it looks to me. So those are things we talk about. Plant health, we talk about managing all the way to the end. I guess I would say it this way, I will never give up on a crop. I drove in here the last couple days, all week we've been driving in, and I go by fields that are yellow. And I'm just wondering, where's the farmer? We got yellow corn. What are we doing right now? We're filling the tip. If you tell me you got corn that's light green and yellow and we're filling the tip, how much of this do you think we're going to fill? Probably not much. What would I do? I'd take a wide drop through there, just for grins. I've already researched it. I can take a wide drop through yellow corn, and 48 hours will green it up. I would love to show them. I think we can still save some tip, but those are things that we work on as we go. So let's take a look at the far side of the lot now and harvest. We talk about harvest and some of the things that we do. For years, I'd watch corn heads, and we've gone and we've added bristle blocks. So we've come in, let me get them held right here. We came in our gathering chains and we put yield saver brushes on these gathering chains. What are we doing? We're trying to stop corn from falling underneath the corn head down to the deck plates. We know that if we can put a brush on here, we can really cushion the ear that comes down and hits the deck plate so we don't shell so much butt shelling. But then also it's all about capturing. How much of this can we actually capture as it comes up? Also, we're going to show you over here at the harvest, we're going to show you here our yield saver. I'm sorry, our chain roll. So we put this stalk roll on. It's a retrofittable stalk roll on case, gearing off, and deer. This is a replacement stalk roll. And what's it going to do? It's going to cut and notch this residue so that microbials can get in there. I know that on this stalk right here, Mike and his team, they can't get in. So they only can come in from the butts. So by putting a stalk roll on that, we cut it in 7-inch pieces and we chain it so that we can open it up. So now we get very fast reduction of residue. How long do you think it takes Mike and his team to take a whole corn plant down to pocket change? 5 years. So for 5 years, Mike and his team, they're working on this, all that bacteria. The first thing that goes is the tassel, then the silk, then the leaves, and then they start working on the meat of it here. And it takes them a lot of time. So all we're saying is at 360, can we put chain roll in a corn head to speed that up to 2.5 years? So we're going to harvest here, we'll demonstrate this. We're going to demonstrate the chain roll first. We'll pull right up over the tarp. We'll run those 2 corn tubes down through the corn head running, and we'll see what's measurable underneath. So go ahead and fire up, guys. We'll go ahead and run these spouts down. If you look up on the screen, you can watch the cameras up on the screen, see exactly what it's doing. So I always have them save the last test, the one we just did previous. We talk about an 80% savings. I would tell you that this is the OEM. That's the corn that ran through the gathering chains and through the deck plates. Here's the yield saver brushes. I would tell you we're every bit 90% savings. So over the years, something that's simple as a yield saver puts grain immediately in your tank. So take a look around the booth. We got lots of white shirts. Over in the far corner, we have a bullet display. We'll talk about ripper points. You can take a look at it. We got the new wave set up right behind the bleachers. We got a Sprint hooked here to a case tractor with the 360 tanks. They're sweeping up the corn. You can see the difference. I would say once again an 80 to 90% is pretty safe. We'll have them pick it up here and we'll see exactly what it is. So thanks for stopping in 360. Have a super harvest, a successful harvest, and a safe harvest. Thanks for stopping. We'll talk to you soon.